Looks like we're going to have a mixture of rain and sun today.
That said, we have some blue sky here in Nanaimo, so that's nice.
Ah, is it sunny up there?
It is right now anyway.
Nice.
That can, yeah.
Good. Good. Okay, Brett, are we go? Okay. For everybody here, welcome this morning, this Friday morning. Everyone, please know that this session is being recorded. And we'd also like to begin by acknowledging that we are coming to you from the traditional territory of the Sooke First Nations. I'm Karen Mason, I'm the president of the Sooke Region Chamber. Today's information session is about the grant program. And please know that this is informal. Morningstar and John, could you please raise your hands? They are our guests today, and they're from the provincial government. They're very familiar with the subject we're going to be talking about this morning, and they're going to welcome your questions. And welcome, Morningstar and John, and over to you.
Thank you. So maybe I'll introduce myself, and then John, you can do the same, and then we'll kick it off. So my name is Morningstar Pinto. I work with the province of BC, and I'm currently working to support the Stronger BC projects, being a few of them actually being led out of the Ministry of Jobs, Economic Recovery and Innovation. And I work with John now. We've just started working together a few months ago, and it turns out we're a great team. So we're doing a bit of a road show to talk about the small and medium-sized business recovery grant program.
All right, thanks, Morningstar. She is definitely the Thelma to my Louise. I am John Cruz. As Morningstar mentioned, I'm the manager of finance with Trade and Industry Development, also with the same ministry. Morningstar and I have been asked to help out with Stronger BC, particularly the small and medium-sized business recovery grant program. And yeah, happy to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
So why don't we start by getting everybody giving a little bit of an overview of the program. And I was asked just to remind folks that are coming on that this is being recorded. So I'm doing my due diligence. This is being recorded. So just to get everybody on the same page, a little bit about the program. Essentially, it was launched in September of 2020. As a way of providing financial assistance to businesses that have been drastically impacted by COVID-19. So the intent is really to help businesses stabilize and adapt their operations and sustain their employees. So the grants are, they're being offered as a means to help businesses implement a recovery plan, and that in turn will help keep them viable, hopefully, throughout what may be a prolonged period of reduced activity. So in late December, the BC government improved the program to make it easier for businesses to qualify for these important grants. So essentially, we got a new minister. He was listening to industry and businesses, and he said, you know what, there's a really good opportunity to simplify the application process. So, and I think a lot of people within the ministry that were actually working on the program day to day had a lot of really great ideas too, John being one of them. So they streamlined the application criteria, and as well as the actual recovery plan to make it a bit easier for businesses to apply to get the funding. So the program now is delivered in 2 steps. First, businesses go to the program page and they learn how the program works to determine that they're eligible to apply and to see what they need to apply. So that's the kind of like information gathering stage. And then they're ready for step 1, which is starting an application. And so that process is essentially taking all of the information that's needed, applying online, and then there's a bit of a review process. And after their application has been reviewed to make sure that they're eligible, then they're asked to complete a recovery plan. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it. Businesses can receive up to $30,000 in funding, with an additional $15,000 for eligible tourism businesses. So with that, maybe John, you can take over and chat a little bit about what's changed since the launch of the program.
Sure. Thanks, Morningstar. So what we'll talk about right now is sort of the changes that, as Morningstar alluded to, the minister listened to industry. We've given him feedback as we've been sort of iterating since September and learning what was right, what was wrong, and how to make it better and might make it easier, because that's the feedback we were hearing over the first 2 or 3 months, was that it was cumbersome, was hard to apply, and this information, it was too hard to gather, and sort of in that breath of making it as simple and as least administratively cumbersome and inclusive, we made several changes, and I'll just go over those right now. One in particular, the first in particular actually, is the removing the requirement for a business to have been operating for 3 years. It is now 18 months from the date of their application. So moving back from February would be like August. August, yeah, something like that, August or September 2019. Businesses that are temporarily closed or seasonal are now eligible for the program. And that also speaks to seasonal tourism businesses, so that we are assessing their specific business cycle, not just a typical business cycle that you see in sort of a standard business. We've removed some of the onerous requirements related to remittance accounts like GST, PST, WorkSafe. Let's see here. We adjusted the revenue loss criteria. It was 70% for March or April year over year. So March 2019 versus March 2020 as an example. And it used to be 70% for March and April, and then continued losses of 50%. Now the criteria is still 70% for March and April, but 30% for ongoing losses. So if they can demonstrate 30% losses from sometime between May and present, then we are accepting them as eligible. The reason for that particular criteria remains the same, is that we're trying to target the most gravely impacted businesses by COVID. We've adjusted the employer requirement, so businesses no longer have to have staff. So that helps include sole proprietors or partnerships that are operating solely on their own. So now it used to be 249, and now it's just up to 149 staff. As Morningstar mentioned, this program was announced on September 17th. So grant funds that are dispersed can be applied to retroactively to expenses that were incurred up to September 17th or September 17th onwards, related to their recovery. Also, we have loosened the restriction on what those funds can be spent on, and that now includes rent and other sort of overhead fixed costs like rent, utilities, property taxes. As Morningstar mentioned, the tourism top-up has been increased to a maximum of 15,000 now. So the base grant goes up to 30,000, and then for tourism businesses that simply just self-declare, they can receive an additional $15,000. And on that note about tourism, we brought in our definition of tourism. It used to be a lot more strict, and the wording really follows what Statistics Canada uses for definition of tourism, and it's more broad and trust-based. So businesses simply have to declare that their tourism, a significant part of their business is tourism, and that's in the application process as well. Now moving on to the recovery plan stage, we listened to some of the feedback that we're getting. Folks can still be connected with Small Business BC to be matched with a professional service provider to help develop the recovery plan. But applicants also have the option to either complete the recovery plan themselves or bring along their own professional service provider, their accountant, certified lawyer, bookkeeper, whatnot. There's some specific criteria regarding who can be a professional service provider, and the value of those services are up to $2,000. And remember that $2,000 is independent of the grant itself. So that's specifically for a service provider, and it doesn't impact the grant that the business would receive. One thing I want to mention about the recovery plan is, just as Morningstar and I have been working on this program since September, October, this recovery plan used to be about 24 pages. It was just way too much, and it was hard for businesses to sort of have to navigate this document and try to sort of prepare a recovery plan or redo a business case plan or something. What we've reduced it to basically 5 pages. 2 of them are declaration pages and a sign-off page. So it's really 2 pages, and it's really just telling us what do they plan to do with the grant money? How is it going to help their recovery? How is it going to help their community? Is it reasonable, and is it implementable? And that's really what anybody wants to know, right? To make sure there's some way of impacting their business. I think that's it of the big changes that we've had, Morningstar.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great overview, John. And I think maybe we can talk a little bit about what we're seeing and what would really help businesses get through the process a little bit faster. I think what we're hearing is right now, there's a little bit of a challenge with complete applications. So people are applying, but John, I know on your end that the adjudicators are actually having to go back three and 4 times to ask for more information. So we're working on our end to try and clarify and make sure that businesses are reviewing the documents they need to submit before they actually apply to help move that process along. But are there any tips that you could give businesses on that end for making it smooth as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Morningstar, you're right. What we've been seeing as applications have been coming in, particularly the ones that have come in since the announcement just leading up to Christmas, we're still seeing that about 50% of the applications that are coming in are lacking some type of documentation. It could be their tax return, because we are ensuring that folks that are applying are current and pay taxes in BC. So they may not have their notice of assessment or their tax return. They may not have payroll documents if they do have staff, because that does impact the grant calculation. But particularly, most of the documents that we're asking for already exist, because they file their taxes. If they're unincorporated, they'll have their T1 and their statement of business activities. If they're incorporated, they'll have their T2 and financial statements that they're required to file. So those kind of documents, I think, are, again, I'm an accountant by trade, so it's easy for me to say, it's easy to gather, but those things already exist. There's one thing that we do ask for, and what we're trying to do is sort of measure the impact of COVID year over year. As I mentioned earlier about revenue losses, we do ask for something called month-to-month revenue analysis. So what was your total revenue in March or April 2019 versus what the revenue was in March or April 2020. That document actually, Morningstar, doesn't exist. People have to actually pull that together, and it's a little bit of, yeah, I get it. Like I said, I was from audit, and I know that it says, well, now I have to go through all these books, and yeah, there's a little bit of work on that end, but the rest of the documentation, 5 big pieces, they already exist. That's probably the big challenge that we're seeing, is that the one document that doesn't exist, where they have to compile information over the 24 months or 18 months, whatever it is has been a bit of a challenge.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's helpful. Just so that, for this group, as you're encouraging businesses to apply, or as your business is thinking about applying, just making sure that is included, I think will be super helpful, and will help the process move along. Because if an adjudicator gets what they need right away, I think it takes them maybe 30 minutes or so to go through and go, yep, got it, yep, got it, yep, okay, you're ready to go, right? But if there's that back and forth.
I scared one of the some of our adjudicators, because again, I'm an accountant, and I did one file just to test out the new system, and it took me 17 minutes. And they're like, I can't do that in 17 minutes. And that was full write-up. But I said, don't worry, that's sort of the lower end. But I think, yeah, you're right, Morningstar. If we get all the information that we need, they can definitely turn around files, and that's what we're doing. That's our biggest challenge. So what we've added to the website is a more a document checklist, so people can download that, take that away, and wherever they have to go. If they're online, they'll take it, download, bring it at home, and just compile the information.
We have a question from the floor, if I may ask.
Sure, of course, please.
When people start the process online, typically the online application, how long can an individual expect that process to take?
So again, I think that really depends on how the business keeps their books and how they're tracking things. Like if they've gone through and checked and they've already seen what they need to apply, which we give all that information before they ever click on apply. If they have all that documentation ready, they have it PDF'd and ready to put into the system, it should take less than an hour. So understanding that with a lot of these things, you know, it takes around an hour, maybe 2 hours, but that's after they've spent the time gathering their documentation, right? So I would say it depends on how the business keeps their books and is ready to go. John, anything to add for that one?
No, that's a fair assessment. We have seen people start an application and actually hit submit within an hour. But again, you'd have to have that information compiled prior so that you can ready to upload that information. So I don't take for granted the fact that we're talking about businesses that aren't bookkeepers themselves, they're not accountants, they're just living, you know, their dream of running a business, and the last thing they want to think about, last thing even I want to think about is doing my own sort of financials at home, right? So we recognize that, but yeah, the biggest challenge will probably be compiling the information, sorting it all up together, and then when you hit the application, it's pretty straightforward. It's not that long. It's probably 2-3 pages, I think, of questions, and a lot of it is explanatory. So it's really just do you meet our criteria, and then upload the information. Good question. Thank you.
And then I would say to everybody on the call right now, we've had an interesting process where we didn't have very many people applying. And then we've started getting the word out. We've changed it. We've made it easier, which is great because now we have a lot of people applying. So once the application is in, we do have at a time that it takes. So yes, it doesn't take the adjudicators very long to actually adjudicate it, but there's a queue and we're working through a queue. So I don't want to give any false promises about, yeah, you're going to apply and you're going to hear back in a day or two. Like it still does take time, and we're trying to reduce that time, but I don't want to give any false expectations about turnaround times when it comes to the overall program. So it is a 2-step program. You apply, your application is adjudicated. Once you get the thumbs up, yes, you're eligible, then you work on your recovery plan, and then you submit that. And after that, the adjudication team takes a full look at your application and go, yeah, you know, everything's there. Looks like they've done their homework, looks like they have a good plan and they're preparing for their future, and it's going to help their community, it's going to help their business. We're good to go. So it does take some time. So I thought I'd put that out there just so that there's not any false expectations around hearing back very quickly, because I know that is something that is a work in progress. I know we just hired about 30 extra adjudicators, which is fantastic. But it takes time to get through those. So maybe I'll just finish off with a bit of my canned information for you, and then we can move into a few more questions if that works for everybody. So I thought I'd let you know, some people are interested and have been asking about what are the kind of top sectors that are applying. So right now it's definitely tourism. So tourism operators and vendors are the tops. And then next is food services. So a lot of restaurants and food service businesses. And then the next is services like, we call them services, but they're things like health and beauty and education and cleaning companies and stuff like that. Couple more important things. The grant doesn't need to be paid back. It is taxable, but it doesn't need to be paid back. So again, with Britt's fun name of free money. Yes, it's free, but it does come with work, right? I mean, totally recognize that businesses, there are a lot of grant programs out there, and it's a lot of work and it's a lot of effort. We're trying to make it as painless as possible, but it does take work. This is the people's money, right? We're giving out all of our money is all of your money, and we need to make sure that we're somewhat accountable for how it's being spent. And what else? Businesses that applied before any of the changes in December, they don't have to resubmit their applications. So part of the adjudication process is John and the teams are actually going back into files to make sure that they've caught everybody to say, oh, this person actually is eligible for tourism top up, or this business actually is is eligible because we've moved from 3 years to 18 months. So they are now eligible. So we're taking that effort off of the businesses to have to flag anything or reapply. Yeah, and I think that's about it for the canned stuff. So you can find both John and I on LinkedIn, and we share a lot of program updates, and we're pretty approachable folks. We try to make government more approachable. So yeah.
I've got a couple more questions from the floor, if I may.
Sure.
So the first part of this is how do you typically find that these people, that these applicants, what are they using the money for? Can you give an example of what they're actually using the money for? And my own personal question after that one, you said that it is taxable. What's the formula for the tax? I mean, is it on their individual tax? Like how's that tax? Is it corporate tax? Is it personal tax? How's that done?
Okay, so why don't I answer the first one and then John can answer the second. Does that work?
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Okay, so things that it can be used for. So the sky's the limit to a certain degree. Some folks are retroactively paying for things like, okay, let's say I'm a brewery. I put out a bunch of patio heaters and a bunch of plexiglass dome situations early on in the process, like in October or November. I can put in all my receipts for that. If I'm planning on doing some work preparing for spring to make my business more COVID friendly, I can do that. If I'm planning to pivot my business a little bit and go online and I need to have support with doing some marketing or actually moving online or getting my staff all COVID safety trained and have, I think sometimes like let's say a business is being asked to start delivering, but they don't actually have a way of supporting a delivery service. They can do something like that. So it's really about great ideas that help a business sustain and pay for what's already been done, or think to the future and go, you know what? All my customers really want X, and this is what it's going to take me to get there. I can't think of examples off the top of my head of what's a no-no, but I think it's, businesses know what's best for them generally, and if they and there is the opportunity once they start doing their recovery plan to have support of a professional service provider who really is able to provide advice on the specific businesses, right? So like if you're a manufacturing business, it might be a piece of machinery that you need to help your manufacturing business, which could be the penultimate thing that you really need. So it really varies, but those are a few suggestions. John, do you want to talk about the taxable piece?
Yeah, I'll just add that it's helpful to see, like Morningstar, how companies are sort of viewing how they're going to find their recovery and find their way through it, pandemic. But really, there's a multitude of things like how they're going to pivot to a different revenue stream. How do they access a different market? Some of the more physical things like expanding their outside footprint or creating outside COVID safe sort of patio safe, and expanding that way, or expanding more marketing, those kind of things. That's what we're seeing. If you're saying, if Morningstar to twig my mind when she said what kind of no-nos, the one that I've seen just recently, somebody asked, they didn't submit a recovery plan. That's, can I buy a new car? I'm like, no. It depends. Like if it actually is going to help you pivot to a different revenue stream, we have to understand the market, the argument, and really, like I said, it has to be reasonable, implementable, and how does it impact their recovery and their community, right? Those are the themes that we're looking at from direction from government. In terms of taxable nature of the grant itself, it really depends on how the business is set up. So if you are set up as sole proprietor and you are reporting your business activities as your personal income through your T1 tax return, then it would be taxable in the hands of that person. Now, if you're an incorporated business, then you would obviously be taxed as the incorporated entity, and you'll receive, I believe it's going to come out like it's not going to be, it'll probably be a T4A for sole proprietors or individuals. But for corporations, I assume it'll be some type of other form that they would report as other income. Yeah, similar to what they're already doing with other grant programs out there.
Thank you.
Of course. I'm gonna have a sip of coffee just to wet my palate here. Okay.
Do we have any other questions from the floor since we've got Morningstar and John here with us? If you can click the little hand at the bottom of your screen. If you click that, I know that you've got a question to ask. No? Okay, so Britt, can you come back on, please, so I can, I just want to make sure that so we have recorded this. We're going to have it available to everyone who wasn't able to participate today, that they can watch it after the fact. And we are also going to provide the link to this site. Correct, Britt? Yeah. So yeah.
That's already in the chat, along with, and that's where you can contact Morningstar and John. And yeah, our phone number is there as well.
And I actually have a little 2-pager PDF of information that can point people in the right direction. So maybe, Britt, after this, I'll share that with you and you can send it out to participants and add it to whatever site you want to as well.
Thank you. And then I'll also post it on that page, on the Green Money page.
Great.
Thank you.
Super. John and Morningstar, do you have any other words of wisdom you would like to share with us before we depart? We are 2 minutes to 9.
2 minutes. Okay, I'll throw in a pitch for the Launch Online program that was just launched yesterday. So another one coming out of our ministry. This one is essentially to help businesses that don't have an online presence really launch their online presence. So it's a separate chunk of funding. There is some overlap in what could be done with our program and this one, but this one has a different application process, even more streamlined than this one. So if people are just needing some help with their kind of launching their digital online services, that would be a great one. So if you Google BC Government Launch Online, there'll be information there as well. Yeah.
Super. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll ensure to include that as well with our links.
Awesome. Okay, thanks everybody.
Morningstar and John, thank you so much for this incredible information that is so needed this morning. Thank you everyone for attending today, and everyone have a fabulous Friday, and I hope you have a great weekend too. Bye everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.